shall we? Cool. So I now have the privilege to introduce our panel. I'm going to introduce each one quite quickly, and then what I'm going to do is, if we follow in the same order that I'm saying your names, if you can introduce yourself, please explain to everybody where you're from, and what is your either personal, your organization, or your business's kind of stance on regenerative tourism. So let's give that a go. So first of all, as you've heard from Anna, we have Kristin Dunne with us today. We have Leanne Muntz with us today. We have Megan Williams. And first time that I've ever introduced a panel where we've got more women than men. So thank you, Waikato Impact Hub. We have our male on our panel today, Jason Hill. So in that order, Kristin, would you like to kick us off?
Kia ora koutou, ko Kristin Dunne toko ingoa, tumuaki o te poi tamana nui a toi e mahi ana. So my name is Kristin, and I am the Chief Executive at Tourism Bay of Plenty. We're the beautiful coastal region from Waihi Beach through to Hopi Beach. And this is my son who is homesick and just loves to Zoom bomb me right at the wrong time, no matter how well he's bribed. I'm just laughing actually also at Jason being referred to as the token male on this panel. So Jason is one of our board members, and I'm really blessed to have such inspirational and aspirational board members who really help to drive and support our mahi. And I think our version, or my version anyway, for our organisation, our region, is that we're using the innate knowledge and wisdom from our kaumātua in our region and trying to apply that to mainstream tourism management. So very much trying to take the concept of te taio or mori, as Anna described, and find ways to work within those principles in a mainstream way and bring that through into tourism destination management for our region. Very much see ourselves as part of the guardianship and the protection for our people and our place and all of its species.
Beautiful, thank you. And so Leanne.
Tēnā koutou e mātakitaki mai nei, ko Leanne Muntz tōku ingoa, he uri tēnei no Ngāti Koroki Kahukura me Ngāti Ranginui. Good afternoon, everybody. So I've just introduced my tribal affiliations, Ngāti Koroki Kahukura from here in the Waikato, and Ngāti Ranginui, my marae over in Bethlehem and Tauranga, or Tauranga Moana. I'm the chair of Tainui Waka Tourism, which is the Māori Regional Tourism Organisation. We're a voluntary board, a small board of 6. And as a practitioner, myself and my husband also have a small company called Aotearoa Experience. And we organise cultural events and bespoke tours or tailored tours. We have done for the last, since the early 2001. And for Tainui Waka Tourism, for many of our SMEs and personally for our own business, the main thing for us in terms of sharing our stories with the world, our narrative, it's about walking our talk and maintaining the values that have been embedded in terms of, we call them the tangas. There's kaitiaki tanga, manaki tanga, aroha ki te tangata. So it's all about being hospitable, looking after people, looking after the environment. So we try and maintain that in everything we do on a personal and in the business world as well. Kia ora.
Beautiful. Kia ora, thank you. And Megan, over to you.
Kia ora koutou, ko tititea te maunga, ko mata Aotearoa, no Wanaka aho, ko Megan Williams tako ingoa, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. So yes, I live in Wanaka. My name is Megan Williams. I'm a sustainability advocate for tourism industry Aotearoa. I'm also a small tourism business operator. And I'm also involved with a myriad of environmental regeneration work here in the Upper Clutha. So I project manage a water project for Wanaka, and I've also been involved in like an impact hub. It's called We Are One, or One New Zealand, and we've had 3 years of sustainability, or actually regenerative type summits here in Wanaka. And in my role as sustainability advocate at TIA, we're helping businesses and regions to utilise the tourism sustainability commitment as a tool to help them as a business to do things differently. And we've recently hardened up the sustainability commitment, so made it a lot more regenerative rather than just sustainable as it probably was earlier. So our intention is to keep moving that bar whilst bringing the whole industry along with us. So at the moment we have 1,400 businesses signed up to that, and we've just made it compulsory for all TIA members. So, kia ora.
Beautiful, beautiful, thank you. And last but definitely not least is Jason Hill. Number one saying in 2020, you are
onward. Kia ora tēnā koutou katoa, ko rangi toto te maunga, ko hoti Aotearoa, ko Pakeha te iwi, no tamaki makaurau ahau, ko Jason Hill tōku ingoa. Kia ora tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Jason Hill from Meneth Consulting. I've had quite a lot of experience in cross-dressing, so next time I'm on this panel I will put a skirt on. I'm pretty comfortable with that. I have had 25 years in the tourism industry here in New Zealand and internationally as well. I've been on a number of boards, including Director of PATA, Tourism Bay of Plenty, Cruise New Zealand, Eyesight New Zealand, and a bunch of others. I spent 6 years as Head of Auckland Tourism and also Regional Manager for Tourism New Zealand based in Tokyo for 6 years as well. I'm currently doing my own thing in the consulting space and also have a executive recruitment company called Tourism Talent. I've probably was involved in one of the early destination management plans in Auckland at Aotearoa, and have been involved at a governance level through the Tourism Bay of Plenty plan, and I'm currently leading the destination management plan for Northland. So yeah, I've really on board with the whole regenerative tourism kaupapa, and I'm pleased to be part of the panel today.
Thanks, Jason. Thank you so much. Yeah, the piece of work that you did at Aotearoa, instead of doing a tourism marketing, doing tourism management, in my opinion, was one of the big shifts for our country to start looking at this. So, so thanks for that. So I'm going to kick off with a question and ask each of our panel members where they have an answer and want to participate. And I guess, Jason, I'll throw it over to you first. And that is, I think it would be really hard and look at the people that are on today, obviously align a little bit with this idea because that's why they're here. They're interested to learn more about it. So I think that it might be fair to say, sorry to make assumptions, that everybody here believes there's value in understanding what regenerative tourism and probably wants to come on board and do something for their individual business, their organization, their community, the DMO, but something that requires such a mind shift and new ways of being are sometimes hard to explain to a board or to explain a commercial value. So what do you see as the potential commercial value of this to get the buy-in from everybody needed within a business or a board?
So was that aimed at me?
I was just going to ask you to kick it off first, and then we'll let everybody join in if you don't mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Those of you on the call who know me know that I'm pretty pragmatic, and whilst I think we all buy into the why and the what, the big question here is the how, the who, and the when. And you know, the how is as Anna mentioned, is the really challenging part, and there are multiple hows, I think, to be addressed. But And obviously it starts with all of us in the community, but I do believe we need strong leadership, and whether that's coming from the private sector or the government, you know, a combination of the carrot and the stick, I think, are going to be required to speed up the mind shift. Mind shift takes time, and in my view takes far too long. And so there is in my view, a requirement for a carrot and a stick approach in some cases to make this, to turbocharge that time frame. I don't wish to take over the conversation too much, but and I'm sure, you know, Leanne's going to talk about this, but you know, the concept of regeneration I don't think is new. It's been around for thousands of years in Indigenous populations all over the world, and you know, the culture, the values, and the philosophy of stewardship and guardianship and kaitiaki, and I'm not the right person to talk about this, but they've been around for a long time, and thankfully New Zealand and the regeneration, maybe that's not the right word, of the Māori culture is something that I think we are ahead of the other countries on. And the reason I was on the call before, just before this call, was with Ben Sherman, who's the leader of the World Indigenous Tourism Council, and we were talking about this very stuff, about the renaming of places and the impact that has on brand and value. And we were talking to someone in Chile about Rapa Nui and East Island. So look, I'm going all over the show, but from bringing it back to the commercial, I think that the industry, and certainly in New Zealand anyway, has actually been pretty good at doing the sustainable tourism stuff, and I appreciate we're pushing beyond that now, but we were, you know, there are a lot of businesses who were proud of what they were doing in that space. And I think sometimes, you know, words around sustainability, I completely agree with you, Anna, they've lost their meaning. What does it mean? What's the definition? Whose definition do you use? We run the risk of regeneration, the word regeneration running into that. Essentially, it feels like it's about giving back more, paying it forward. There's other terminology that I think have been used in other forums that people have kind of got a concept of, and I don't know, to me it's the way you communicate that is going to make, really, if it sounds a little bit too hippie-ish and a little bit too green, it's going to turn off a certain sector of the segment. Whereas if you take the analogy of Christmas, and you know, it's supposed to feel better giving than it is receiving, and how do we instill that kind of thinking or that communication, that simplistic communication, into everyday language and into everyday life? I think it'll make sense to businesses. It'll make sense that there's incremental value from a commercial point of view. So, yeah, off the cuff, sorry, rambling all over the place, but that's my point.
Okay, I would love to find out who's going to offer the carrot and who's going to offer the stick, but I want to make sure that the other panelists have an opportunity to answer this question. So I'll put it out to Megan, Leanne, and Kristin. Did you want to chat about where you believe you see the potential commercial value, and how you get your organization or your board on board?
Okay, so I can talk probably about commercial value, and I think we need to change what commercial value is, how it looks. We're not measuring the right things at the moment. So, you know, value comes in a lot of ways that are not always top of mind. We've always thought of economic value. But I think if we encourage things like slow tourism and spending time in New Zealand, for example, and I think Peter Harris wrote this really eloquently yesterday in a Ticker article, that, you know, we don't place value on like a backpacker traveling around New Zealand for 3 or 6 months and then actually getting involved in one of our industries, our fruit picking or orchards, you know, working. So that provides a different kind of value to New Zealand Inc. than what we've measured before. What we can teach visitors while they're here provides enormous value, commercial value back to New Zealand. We can teach them a lot of stuff that they can take back with them to their home, to their community. They can take those things with them. They can talk about New Zealand's fabulous views and purchase New Zealand products when they return home. So that is another value at the moment that we do not count. if people really value New Zealand and what we're trying to do here and what we are doing in many communities already, they might want to come back here also in the future. They might want to send their kids to one of New Zealand's universities, for example. So there's another way that we're creating commercial value through tourism that we're not selling at the moment, and I think we should.
Yeah, it's really interesting because we just had Ryan Chandler just make a comment, moving away from GDP as being the sole indicator of prosperity. And we've got lots of thumbs ups and exactly. And we have examples of that in other countries. So in marketing, we often talk about being able to measure every single interaction to have a result. So if we can look at that backpacker who, then helped, our industry, and, the parent whose child came here, that'd be amazing if we can measure that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, beautiful. Kristin, did you want to comment on this subject, or do you want to keep moving? You guys can unmute yourself and just pop in, yeah?
I'd love to hear from Leanne first, actually.
Beautiful.
Kia ora. Kia ora. So I just wanted to touch on the values that were talked about, and like I mentioned, we how we try and walk our talk. I want to acknowledge LaDonna Harris, who is a Comanche elder, nearly 90 now, and I acknowledge Ben Sherman as well, because Ben's part of the Indigenous community that I'm connected with over in the States. But LaDonna runs an organisation called Americans for Indian Opportunity, and through her, back in the early 2000s, they run an ambassador and leadership development program based on the 4 R's, and then they've gifted this program to us. We added the 5th R. Those 5 R's are responsibility, relationships, redistribution, reciprocity, and we added the 5th R, which was respect. And through that, through each one, every time we host our manuwhiri, so when visitors come, they arrive as a manuwhiri or as a visitor. When they leave, by the time we've finished with them, they leave as whānau, so they're family members. So we take it another step further because we have these intimate relationships along the way and through the experiences. So they leave feeling like whānau to Aotearoa as well, our international visitors. And while profit is important, it's not our primary focus, but however, it comes back in other ways. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Kristin, did you want to say anything?
I think just to reinforce Megan's point that if we replace the word commercial, or maybe we delete the word commercial and we talk about value, then there's all sorts of ways in which that value can be measured in different ways. And I think, as Anna said during her presentation, once you see it differently, you can't unsee it anymore. So I guess for us in the Bay of Plenty, we're continuously trying to learn more, see more, uncover more, to work with people who have the wisdom and be able to take that thinking into our current worldviews and expand on that. And so for me, if we're talking about commercial value, I think there is absolutely a call from our visitors, from our manuhiri, to offer these types of experiences and to be more thoughtful about everything we're doing in the world in the short term. But really, this is about the long term, right? And so if we don't exist in the long term, if our nature doesn't exist in the long term, then there is no commercial value to anybody. So I think that long-term thinking that, our amazing Indigenous culture, but also others give us, is so, so important. And then you stop thinking about commercial value in a singular form. And in fact, we'll probably drop that commercial word from your vocabulary.
Yes, see, I think we run a risk if we actually drop the commercial aspect of it. It's having a sole focus on commercial is not right, but having more than one focus is the way forward. You can't do a lot of this stuff without money, and money becomes an enabler of so many of the other things that, the other benefits. It creates the ability to do more in the environmental, social, and cultural space. So I think it's not at the expense of, but it's adding other things to it, because I don't think you're going to succeed in the other areas if you don't have a commercial basis to, or not so much commercial, but a funding basis to get other stuff done.
I think that the last point I'd like to just mention is that people are voting with their feet or with their dollars.
Yeah.
So, and with this massive value shift we've seen in people, then the market is changing anyway, and people are going to choose products that are more holistic in their nature and are working in communities from their place.
And we've got some really great examples of that in New Zealand, right? Wow, I just had a brain fade. Shoes, guys, air. Somebody help me out. The New Zealand
Airbirds or something.
All birds.
Thank you. Yeah, and we've got some really, really good examples, and we have some great examples of tourism operators that have made sustainability, because that's the word that was used previously, but it's really regenerative as part of their ethos. You know, and they do benefit from it. I mean, Camp Glenorchy, there's lots of tourism examples out there, and many Māori operators that is 100% why people go to them, because they align. So yeah, like you said, there needs to be some commercial value, but hopefully it's just measured in a different way. Yeah. Hey, I'm going to go back to something that Jason said at the beginning and kind of open it up for some comment. And that was you saying that it might need to be a little bit of a carrot and a stick kind of situation. So what do you see the role of the government is in establishing or monitoring something like this?
Yeah, look, I think that there's certain parts of the ecosystem that aren't controlled by the community. So I'm thinking of national parks and access to certain places, which, you know, marine parks, what the work I'm doing in Northland at the moment, you know, very outspoken tourism operator, Dive Tutakaki Iran is proposing that 30% of all the marine space in the Northland in New Zealand should be, you know, made marine parks. And in some of the engagement work we've been doing, the locals are up in arms because they won't be able to fish there. And so, and yet here he is very much a commercial operator proposing this sort of stuff, but he can't achieve that on his own. He does need some government or local government or DOC sort of leadership to buy into that and make those big calls. So I think where there's private sector commercial failure or commercial market failure, the government does need to lead into that stuff and say, you know, we are going to start charging for access to certain places to pay for the ability then to regenerate. So I do think the government has an ability to influence, certainly in the public domain, in a positive way, that stuff. I'm not quite, the incentive stuff I think comes to incentivizing the private sector to do things better, to lead them by the nose in a positive way rather than a regulatory way to do stuff, so that they can see the benefits and similar to the way they do, you know, various programs around the world to incentivize people into electric cars, etc., etc. Once you get into an electric car, you're sold. But it takes that mind shift, and that incentive sometimes just helps speed up the process.
Leanne, did you have anything that you wanted to share in regards to where you believe the government should or shouldn't be involved in what Jason's saying, the carrot and the stick, or the monitoring or the establishing?
Just briefly, I just think that there needs to be the infrastructure in place in those places that are becoming more so popular, that don't have, you know, the infrastructure in place to cater for the needs. And fortunately, you know, for our domestic tourism, we don't have the over tourism at the moment. But when those borders when they do open, to ensure that they're there. So currently domestic tourism, we can make the most of the opportunities, but I think that, yeah, it really does need to be in place. The infrastructure really does need to be in place in those areas.
The question, Leanne, the question we're having, Leanne, around that is who pays for that, and is it fair that constantly the residents of those regions, who are often in a minority in some cases in terms of numbers to the visitors, are currently the ones, and the taxpayer being forced to pay for that infrastructure? And so, you know, a user pays model allows for that infrastructure to be put in place without the burden falling on the residents.
Absolutely. I mean, that's where the I think it needs to be distributed accordingly. The funds that are taken, the taxes that are taken on the international levy.
I just wanted to tap into Anna's experience, all of your international experience, and speaking to working with other countries on this. And you were using Wales and Flanders and other examples. What are you seeing? What role is the government playing in establishing or monitoring these types of practices or this mindset?
Thanks. I think I'd like to pick up what Jason said. I think it's really ultimately a sense of leadership, which is why suggesting to people that dispelling this myth that it's a trade-off, that if you want to go down this route, you're not being commercial, you're not, I really do get frustrated by this, because there's so little data, accurate data in tourism, that you can say with any confidence that there is a net benefit in every case from every transaction that takes place. We don't know what the costs are. So one area that would really make a difference is if we start to, leadership would be to say, we need to get accurate information here about what tourism is bringing in, where the money is going, and what it's costing. That's one area that I feel we need to take a leadership stance. The other thing I think is I look at what happened in Flanders. Again, they went in 2 years from basically having a perfectly bog standard destination approach. We're going to attract more people next year than last year. We're going to go for GDP, we're going for jobs. They were sitting right next to Amsterdam and Holland, which had a major over-tourism problem. And they realized that if they continued down that path, they could also be having the same problem. So in that case, it was leadership where our CEO said, "Wait, guys, he didn't wait for COVID. He didn't know what was going to happen. He said, what kind of tourism do we want to create?" And he couldn't do that without engaging the community in these discussions and really looking at some of these questions. Are we really generating the net benefit that justifies what we're doing at the moment? So unfortunately, I mean, I have worked in lots of different countries, but not all at the same time. So I'm not 100% au fait with where every country is. I know that there is this shift into this notion of what is real value, So what I like in New Zealand that I think is very helpful is to saying we need to balance the contribution. So let's look at the issue like social capital or health. I'll pick health, for example. You've got a major problem right now, a social problem of suicides in young people. It's a horrible thing to talk about. It's not peculiar to New Zealand, it's happening in other people. How can tourism get involved in contributing to the health of young people? How do we get them outdoors? How do we get them participating? Take COVID, for example. COVID, your susceptibility to being sick with COVID, I mean, this is the wrong example to use in New Zealand since you've managed to keep it at bay. But, are people eating healthily? So again, we're in the hospitality industry, we're in the healing business. How do we get involved with the farmers to make sure that we're procuring from local producers who are producing it organically and we're serving that up to our guests? And how are we engaging our residents, so that they're coming and learning about. It's just thinking out of the box. It's thinking, I wish I was being more specific right now, There is no one quick fix. As the carrots and sticks, yes, I think we're going to have to be a lot stricter. I see a lot of pledges, not just in New Zealand, but a lot of other places. Pledges aren't going to get us there. We have to reduce our carbon by half in the next 10 years. Pledges aren't going to do it if that's all you're doing is writing a pledge.
Yeah, we need leaders, Anna, as well. And there's one of them on the call here. Yeah, one on the call today, Les.
I was just going to say,
Sedima Hotels, yeah. Who they walk the talk and they don't run around telling the world about it. They're just out there doing it. And from a
examples, yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, that's exactly how it's going to change. Is if people, it takes a small group. It could be a community that come together and have a clear vision. This is happening all over the world. It's coming from the grassroots, in many respects ahead of those people who have leader in their business card. If you follow me. And it's not just the environment side. I from a cultural perspective, from other, I know that the Sedima are very supportive of, employing, this might be the wrong word in this day and age, but, people who've got handicaps or disabilities as well. And so it's a whole supportive approach, which drives their business. And from what I'm gathering, business is pretty good at the moment as well, even despite COVID. So we need leadership in the public sector. We need leadership in the private sector, and we need leadership from a resident perspective. And I love the 5th R, Leanne, respect.
Yeah,
such a powerful word in so many ways.
I think I agree. We need leadership, but not just at the top of the industry. And I think we need real community leadership. And I think one of the carrots can be funding some of the amazing community groups out there doing work, because they are the ones who are creating the change in communities. And I think we'll see some positive stuff come out of the STEP funding that's gone to the regions, looking at destination management planning, those regions that are looking really holistically at that and using that funding to do work with community groups. There are some great examples of those, and I can't wait for some of those stories until we can tell some of those stories. So I think that'll see some great results.
I'm going to ask a question. So, Kristin, you and Jason both, in your RTO work, you did so much great community work, listening to community, Kristin, and putting together your strategy. And Jason, you've been spending most of your time up in Northland talking to every community group. And you guys have now gathered all of this data. We talk about this in our industry all the time. We complain that we don't have data. So sorry, I'm going to put you guys on the spot. You've got all this great community information and feedback. Do you see this as a launch pad where we can, all the different RTOs or all the different regions, as you're doing this great community work, that we can have a central area where all of this feedback and community information is gathered so that we can be making these changes together?
I'll shoot first, Jason. Gina, I guess I don't see it so much as that we're gathering data from
knowledge.
We're opening up a whole new way of communication. And that's not a one-off thing. It has to be like an ongoing conversation that continues to be led from the community. So we have an amazing market research analyst, Stacey, who's on the call right now, and she does gather data. But mostly what we're doing with our community is allowing them to have a say in their place and the future of that place. And that needs to continue forever. So it's not, our whole view of public consultation has completely and utterly altered. It's not about us suggesting something to the community and then saying, hey, what do you think? Or here's your 3 options, pick one. It's much more about opening up ways and channels for the community to tell us what they're thinking, what they want to do. So it's a really big crossover between destination management and placemaking. And I think we're only just starting to create that at a local level ourselves, let alone across the country, because a great place to live is a great place to visit, and they're not mutually exclusive things. And it's connecting our people with our visitors on shared passions, and that's where the transformation occurs. So I don't know that our data would necessarily help anyone else, because it's very much about our place. And there will be some commonalities, of course, with other places, but the one insight that we got from all of the work that we did is that love of place and protection of place for future generations was the common human truth that connects us in our region, and it'll be the same in other regions. And therefore, if we're coming from a place where we're trying to achieve that into the future, then everyone's on the same page.
That was fantastic. Thank you for sharing that clarity and that wisdom. That was fantastic.
Yeah, I would agree with Kristin. One thing that I've just done 15 2.5-hour workshops in Northland across a variety of different communities. And one of the first questions we ask is, what do you love about Northland, and what words sum up this place? And every single group, someone said home. This is home. This is my place. This is our place. And I think that's potentially a key insight into how we communicate the benefit of regenerative tourism going forward, is that nobody wants to destroy their own backyard. They don't want to destroy their place that they're living in. And so that word respect again for when you're in someone else's place, do the same. I agree with Kristin also around data. I don't think the data or the feedback from one region. I've just spent 2 days in Central Otago, and the insights from the far north are probably of little value to them in Central Otago. So I think the thinking, the philosophies, the direction all has commonality, but again, and with the Ministry of Business creating these frameworks for destination management plans, first thing that my group and supporters and sponsors said was that we do not want a cookie cutter destination management plan. We want our own one that's unique to Northland, and I'm sure every other region will be the same. So whilst they're guidelines, I think we're going to end up with very unique destination management plans, as they should be, which I think is brilliant.
I'm just going to do a big shout out to Anna and all of our speakers. If you guys just want to share one last thought on regenerative tourism, one last piece of wisdom, advice, appreciation to Waikato Impact Hub, but I'd like to give everybody just one last opportunity to have something to say before we close off the session. So Anna, do you want to kick us all off?
Yeah, it's been a fantastic conversation. And I'd just like to reiterate that when you get right down to it, it is about engagement of people in their home, about how they want to share that home, how they want to, because unless people are involved in the decision making and the planning and the dreaming and the visioning, then they're going to feel no sense of attachment. So nearly everything that regeneration is about happens in a community, in a place. We can have sticks and we can have carrots. We can have enabling from a national government, and that's one of the areas that we're looking at for the task force. How can national government enable or support these changes? But it comes back to this notion of leadership. If you want to, right now, every one of you is a potential leader here. All right, every one of you can start to initiate some action in your community if you so wish, rather than wait for someone. You can pull people together in a group and start a discussion or a project. Just, who are we? How do we want to change this place? I can't be more prescriptive than that at this stage. But to me, that's where the opportunity is. We're looking at the most incredible opportunity for democratizing so much of our lives. We've been managed, we've been led, we've been lied to. I think it's time we took back our responsibility for organizing ourselves and contributing. And when we do that, a lot of other things will fall into place.
Beautiful, thank you. By the way, you guys are getting lots of comments from people in the chat that they don't want this to end. So thank you, speakers. Leanne, would you like to share anything before we wrap up?
Yeah, it's relationships, having strong relationships and working collaboratively together with your community to build your strong community that's going to benefit the region, benefit our nation and benefit the world.
Kia ora, thank you. Megan?
Two things from me, manaki whenua, manaki tangata, haere whakamua. So care for the land, care for the people, move forward, and that's what it's all about. The second thing is I think technology is going to be a massive enabler in this space. At the summit we had a couple of weeks ago here in Pollock at the WOW Summit, we had Amber from Ara Journeys, who is developing some amazing technology that is going to help in a lot of the things that we're talking about, getting people healthy, active, moving around their place, learning about the history of that place, and an opportunity for tourism to get involved in that as well. So I think, and that's just one company that's working on something great in that space. So I think, yeah, there's lots of opportunity and hope out there. But yeah, thanks for the opportunity today. It's been great. Beautiful. Jason?
Yeah, I've just got three quick things. I've had the time to make a note or two. We've got a massive fight on our hands to, when COVID disappears, or if it does, even if it doesn't, I think we've still got a fight on our hands. Technology and cost efficiencies in travel are driving a growing middle class in Asia, South America and Africa, which isn't as sophisticated, isn't as educated and doesn't have access to the forums and sometimes the wisdom that we often have in this sort of forum. So those guys are wanting and aspiring to travel like we all have for the last 50 years. And how do we manage that massive growth, that massive population? They're all at different stages of travel maturity. And, you know, whilst a lot of the Western world are becoming a lot more conscious and supportive of this, I'm not convinced yet that masses of the population in the world are on the same page quite yet. So that to me is a big challenge. But going forward, it's about taking others on the journey, and what we're doing in Northland. We had MPI in the room, we had farmers in the room, we had people that have never been involved in tourism forums in my 25 years in the industry turning up, quite defensive about what they thought we were doing in tourism, and within an hour or 2 hours being incredibly supportive and wanting to know more about how tourism can help support their paddock or farm to plate type concept around food and produce and all these things. So taking others on the journey, speeding up the journey, I think that communication is really key. Your point around technology, Megan, I think technology is just speeding up and making more efficient the ability to connect people to people. You take Airbnb and things like Uber, the sharing economy, it's making collaboration and connectivity so much faster and easier because that's what people want. And then just finally, I just want to reiterate that point around leadership. We need people with balls to stand up and get shit done, and stop dancing and tiptoeing around the roses. There's far too much of that going on, and we need the government, we need the private sector, people like Les and others in the industry to pave the way by making big calls, big decisions, and that's going to be scary, and people are going to get shot down. But put on a bulletproof vest and stand up. I'd love to be able to try and do it myself, but I'm just a humble little consultant.
I don't think anybody believes that, but thank you, Jason. And over to Kristin, who's, living it down in the Bay of Plenty for her community. What would you like to wrap up with for us today?
Gosh, so I think the key points that I want to reinforce is that the partnership with Tangata Whenua is critical to our success here. This isn't our concept. It's something that we're trying to, it's a worldview that we're trying to learn and bring into our organisation. And that requires us having really strong partnership, as Leanne talked about, in relationships, and to have that wisdom and assistance on the way through. And then I think, you know, we wish there was a roadmap. And I know Anna gets asked this a lot. So what do we do next? Like, what should our plan be? Like, what we've done this, now what? And so I have learned from Anna that there is no plan, no pathway that can be laid out in front of us. So we just got to try some stuff. And if you're doing it with the right intentions, then generally it's going to produce the right results. And whether they're, you know, meaningful enough, it's still better than doing nothing. So I think, and I know my team and I grapple with this all the time when we're going to do our annual plans and trying to get them through our governance processes. We've just got to make the best effort, the best attempt to do what we think is next best for our community and for our people in its place and its inhabitants, based on what they've been telling us. So based on that kind of feedback loop. So yeah, just, I guess to Jason's point, just do some shit. And if you've got the right intentions and you're even trying to understand what this all means and how to apply it, then you'll do some good. And what could be better than that?
Kia ora. Thank you. It's really kind of amazing, you guys, because we're all talking about connections and community, and Jason was talking about up in Northland when he's talking to communities, and first of all, the farmers had barriers, but the longer that they talked, they saw the synergy and they saw the flourishing and the thriving that can be done together. A very funny example of that is the fact that today's regenerative conference was for tourism and agri to both be together, but that the Waikato Impact Hub had audiences going, I'm not interested in agri, I'm just interested in tourism, or I'm not interested in tourism. So we've got some ground to make together in this to really get that message that the thrivability is together. And how many people did we have, Paul? Like 50 people that now understand it more, and that are clearly excited about this conversation and inspired by Anna and all the work everybody is doing.